What if I told you that, in the year 1914, inside a Tokyo corporate tower, a Japanese CEO once tossed the world's most important microchip design into the trash? I know your question now would be why. I will answer you. He did not do that because it was broken, not because it was inferior, but simply because it came from a Filipino engineer he had never heard of. What if I told you that 5 years later, his entire empire, worth $250 billion, would depend on that very innovation to survive? This is not a story about redemption. This is a story about the moment a man realized he had dismissed the future itself, and how one engineer's rejected dream became the backbone of a technological revolution. But before we go deeper, let us meet the man whose name quietly sits in the center of this conversation. His name is Dr. Hiroshi Nakamura. At 68 years old, Dr. Nakamura had built Nakamura Electronics from a struggling component factory into one of Japan's most valued semiconductor company. 3 decades of precision, 3 decades of control, 3 decades of numerous proof of excellence. But on that particular day, July 12, 1914, Dr. Hiroshi Nakamura sat in his corner office on the 42nd floor of the Shinjuku Tower, watching Tokyo streets blur beneath him like a circuit board. His mahogany desk held no photographs, no personal items, only a single stack of patent applications waiting for his review. That morning, buried among dozens of submissions from prestigious universities and established tech firms, was a plain manila envelope with a handwritten label, Advanced Thermal-Resistant Microarchitecture Design, AMD, submitted by Maria Santos, Philippine Institute of Technology. The envelope felt light, almost insubstantial. Nakamura flipped it open, his reading glasses catching the morning light streaming through his floor-to-ceiling windows. The design specifications were dense, innovative even, but something about the submission irritated him. Not the science, the origin. From where exactly? He muttered, shuffling through the pages. The cover letter was written in careful English, almost too formal, as if the author had rewritten it dozens of times. Maria Santos, a name he did not recognize, a university he did not know, a country he associated with outsourced call centers and overseas workers, not microchip innovation. In Japanese corporate culture, pedigree was everything. MIT, Stanford, Tokyo University, these names opened doors. A name like Maria Santos from the Philippines? It closed them. Nakamura had built his company on meritocracy, or so he told himself. In reality, he had built it on a specific type of merit, the kind that came with a prestigious address. His secretary knocked softly. The investment committee is waiting, so... He nodded, glancing once more at the design before tossing the envelope onto his desk. He would review it properly. He thought, later, but later never came. The envelope remained where he left it, slowly disappearing under a growing pile of more familiar submissions. What Nakamura did not know was that Maria Santos had spent 3 years developing that design. 3 years of sleepless nights in a cramped laboratory in Manila. 3 years of testing, failing, rebuilding. She had mortgaged her parents' house to fund the final phase of research. She had turned down lucrative offers from Silicon Valley firms because she believed her innovation deserved to be born in her own country. She believed that Filipino ingenuity could contribute to the world's most critical technology. And when she submitted her design to Nakamura Electronics, she did it with hope, not desperation. Hope. She had chosen Nakamura specifically because his company's thermal management challenges were exactly what her microchip could solve. She had written to him 17 times. No response. She had sent 3 emails. No acknowledgement. But the manila envelope was her last attempt. A physical letter from one engineer to another. She knew the rejection would hurt, but she did not know it would crush her spirit entirely. Back in Tokyo, Nakamura's company was facing a crisis he had not publicly admitted. Nakamura Electronics' latest microprocessor line was generating excessive heat. Customers, major tech companies across Europe and America, were reporting failures in demanding environments. The company's reputation, built on decades of perfection, was beginning to crack. Engineers scrambled, committees convened, consultants from Germany and Silicon Valley submitted proposals. All expensive, all theoretical. None had truly solved the problem. But Nakamura appeared composed in meetings. He wore his authority like a second skin. When nervous investors called, he assured them with the certainty of a man who had never been wrong. "We are Japanese," he would say. "Our engineers will find a solution. We always do." But at night, in his apartment overlooking the Sumida River, he stared at ceiling and felt something he had not felt in decades: doubt. The kind that creeps in slowly, like water seeping through concrete, invisible until the structure fails. 18 months after dismissing the manila envelope, Nakamura attended an international technology conference in Singapore. These events had become routine, a stage to perform confidence, a room to be seen in. He was scheduled to give a keynote about the future of semiconductor design. As he waited backstage, a young woman approached him nervously. "Dr. Nakamura, I sent you a design 2 years ago. I do not know if you received it." The accent was Filipino. Nakamura's mind flashed back to the envelope, the name, the dismissal. For a moment, he considered lying. Instead, something made him look at her properly for the first time. Her eyes were tired but steady. Her hands trembled slightly, but her posture was dignified. "I did receive it," he said slowly. "Why do you mention it now?" Maria took a breath. "Because I've been following your company's thermal issues, and I know my design solves them. I do not come here to complain about rejection. I come here because your customers deserve better." They talked for 20 minutes in a quiet corner of the conference center. Not the kind of conversation Nakamura typically had with engineers. This was direct, almost confrontational, but without hostility. Maria explained her microchip's thermal-resistant architecture with a precision that impressed him despite his resistance. She described how the design could reduce heat dissipation by 4 to 7% while maintaining processing speed. She spoke about testing results, about the materials she had discovered, about the mathematics underlying every decision. Nakamura listened, and as he listened, a terrible realization settled over him. She was right. The design was elegant. It was exactly what his company needed, and he had thrown it away because of a name, because of an assumption, because his blind spots had made him receptive to an engineer who had not come from the right place. That night, he could not sleep. He sat in his hotel room overlooking Singapore's harbor, thinking about all the other talented people his company had overlooked. How many innovations had been dismissed because they came with unfamiliar names? Nakamura did something rare for him. He asked for help. When he returned to Tokyo, he called Maria and offered her a position as consulting engineer. Not to steal her design, to work with her on it, to bring her to Japan, to implement her innovation properly. Maria wept when she received the call. Not tears of joy alone, but tears of vindication. Her parents wept. Her colleagues in Manila wept. The girl who had been told she was dreaming too big was finally being seen. But the decision was controversial in Nakamura's company. Some board members questioned it. "She has no track record with us. She is unknown in the industry. We are committing to an unproven engineer." Nakamura sat silently through these objections. Then he did something that shocked everyone. He brought Maria into the boardroom, not after she had proven herself. Before, he wanted them to hear her speak, to see her knowledge, to understand that merit was not measured by familiar names. When Maria stood and spoke about her design, the room changed. This was not a junior engineer. This was an inventor. Maria landed at Narita Airport on a rain-soaked November morning, a single large suitcase containing everything she owned of value. She had sold her apartment in Manila, left her aging parents in the care of her siblings, risked everything on the belief that Tokyo was where her future waited. Her hands shook as she cleared immigration. Her heart raced in the taxi driving through Tokyo's endless streets, past buildings taller than anything she had seen, through crowds moving with mechanical precision. She had spent her entire career reading about Tokyo, studying Japanese companies, admiring Japanese engineering. Now she was here, not as a visitor, as a professional. The hotel where they had arranged for her to stay was modern but impersonal. That first night, she stood at her window on the 15th floor, looking at the neon-lit streets below, the pachinko parlors and convenience stores and salarymen hurrying home. She thought about her mother, her father, the laboratory she had left behind. She thought about the manila envelope she had sent 2 years ago, and she whispered to herself, "Now I will show them what I can do." The first day at Nakamura Electronics was disorienting. Maria had imagined Japanese efficiency as a kind of poetry. What she experienced was more like a military operation. Every minute was scheduled. Every corridor followed a pattern. Every engineer moved with a specific kind of focus. She was assigned to a laboratory on the 35th floor. Her team consisted of 6 senior engineers, all men, all over 50, all visibly uncomfortable with the presence of a young Filipino woman. They had been told she was a consultant. They had not been told why. They certainly had not been told that she was there to save the company. In the first meeting, one of the engineers, Takeshi, a man with silver hair and a perpetually stern expression, questioned her credentials. "Where did you receive your doctorate?" he asked in English that was technically correct but delivered like an interrogation. "University of the Philippines," Maria answered. "I did not study abroad. I did not have those resources." The room went quiet. In Japanese corporate culture, this was a vulnerable admission. But Maria continued, "What I did have was a problem I needed to solve and the stubbornness to solve it." The next 3 weeks were relentless. Maria would arrive at 5:47 a.m., 13 minutes before anyone else, and begin setting up her workspace. She had brought her original research materials, her notebooks filled with calculations and sketches, her testing protocols. The Japanese engineers watched her, some with skepticism, some with subtle interest. She began presenting her microchip's architecture in detailed technical sessions. She showed them not just the design, but the journey to the design, the failed experiments, the mathematical dead ends, the breakthroughs that came from unconventional thinking. Takeshi, the stern engineer, began asking questions, not challenging questions, curious questions. Why did you choose this thermal conducting material? What would happen if you adjusted this parameter? How did you arrive at this conclusion? Maria answered each one thoroughly, with the patience of someone who had explained her work to herself thousands of times. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, something shifted. The engineers began treating her not as an outsider, but as a colleague. One morning, Takeshi brought her a coffee. Japanese coffee, black, perfect temperature. For the early mornings, he said simply, but the corporate pressure was mounting. A major American client was threatening to shift their business to a competitor. The thermal issues in the current microprocessor line were costing the company millions in returns and repairs. The board wanted results. They wanted them fast. Nakamura called Maria into his office, the same corner office where he had dismissed her envelope years ago. "How long will this take?" he asked, not unkindly, but with the urgency of a man whose legacy was at stake. Maria did not lie. 6 months to implement properly. 3 months if we cut corners and accept a 10% margin of error. "We cannot cut corners," Nakamura said. "This must be perfect." "Then we need 6 months," Maria replied. "But Dr. Nakamura, I need to tell you something. Your engineers are excellent. Your facilities are state-of-the-art. But this innovation, it requires something your company has perhaps forgotten." "What?" he asked. "Risk-taking," Maria said. "You have built your empire on perfection, but perfection creates caution, and caution creates slow decisions. To implement this properly, your whole team needs to trust that innovation sometimes requires failing along the way." The decision was made. Nakamura gave Maria full authority over the thermal management division. Unprecedented. A woman who had been with the company for less than a month, from the Philippines, from an unknown university, was given control over one of the company's most critical systems. The board objected. Some executives submitted their resignations. But Nakamura held firm. What he did not tell them was that he had stayed awake calculating probabilities. He had contacted Silicon Valley contacts to verify Maria's work. He had read every paper she had written. And he had come to a conclusion. Betting on Maria Santos was the least risky decision he could make. Because the alternative, continuing with a failing system, was guaranteed to destroy the company. Maria began working 18-hour days. She brought in engineers from Manila to help with specific technical aspects. Nakamura broke protocol and allowed this. International hiring, short-term contracts, unusual flexibility in a company known for rigid structures. The laboratory became a place of intense focus. Coffee cups piled up, whiteboards filled with equations. Late-night conversations in English and broken Japanese. Slowly, the prototype began to take shape. 3 months into the project, disaster struck. During the first major testing phase, the prototype failed. Not a small failure, a catastrophic failure. The microchip overheated within seconds. The thermal conducting material had degraded unexpectedly under the extreme temperatures required for the most demanding applications. Maria sat in the laboratory at 2 a.m., staring at the burnt circuitry, feeling something she had not felt in years, the weight of having failed publicly. She had risked everything. Her country had watched a native daughter take this opportunity. Japanese engineers had doubted her. And now, her design, was broken. She called her mother in Manila. It was early morning there. "Mama, the prototype failed," she said in Tagalog, and her voice broke. Her mother listened silently, then said, "Maria, you have not failed. You have learned. There is a difference." That conversation saved her. But what happened next changed everything. Takeshi came to the laboratory at 3 a.m. He had been monitoring the testing remotely from home. He came silently and stood beside her, looking at the destroyed prototype. "Do you know what this means?" he asked. "We go back to drawing board," Maria whispered. "Yes," Takeshi said, "and you will find the answer there." What followed was the most intensive period of Maria's professional life. She completely reimagined the thermal conducting system, not starting over, building on the failure, using the destroyed prototype as data, testing new material compositions, bringing in specialists from universities across Asia. Nakamura approved every expense without hesitation. The company was hemorrhaging money on this single project. If it failed again, some financial analyst said he would need to resign. He did not care. He had staked his future on this engineer, and he would see it through. Maria worked with a singular focus that bordered on obsession. Takeshi became her closest collaborator. They would sit in the laboratory until dawn, discussing approaches, testing theories, pushing each other toward solutions. One night, after days without sleep, they discovered it. A combination of materials they had theoretically considered but never properly tested. Graphene-enhanced copper matrix. When they ran the simulation, the results were extraordinary. Heat dissipation increased by 53%. Processing speed remained consistent. The design was not just a solution. It was superior to what Maria had originally conceived. The second prototype succeeded beyond expectations. When Nakamura saw the testing results, he sat silently in his office for an hour. The engineer from the dismissed envelope had created something extraordinary, a microchip that would revolutionize thermal management in semiconductors, a design that his competitors would spend years trying to replicate. And it had come from a woman his company had almost never met, from a country he had underestimated, from a mind he had almost closed his door to forever. He called Maria into his office. She came nervously, unsure if the meeting was about praise or something else. Instead of speaking, Nakamura stood up and bowed, a full, respectful bow. In Japanese culture, this gesture carries immense weight. It is an acknowledgement of hierarchy, of respect, of apology. Maria did not know what to do. She bowed back, but her eyes filled with tears. "Maria," Nakamura said, "I owe you an apology that words cannot adequately express. I dismissed you before I understood you. I made assumptions based on prejudice I was not even aware I carried. You have not only solved our crisis, you have shown me what weakness looks like in success. Thank you." 6 weeks later, Nakamura Electronics held a press conference, not in a typical corporate setting, in the laboratory where Maria had worked. International media was invited. American tech companies, European manufacturers, Chinese competitors. Nakamura stood at the podium and told the story, not the polished version, the real version. How he had dismissed genius because it arrived in unfamiliar packaging. How he had nearly lost his company because of his own blind spots. How a Filipino engineer had saved him. The story went viral, not because of the technology, though the technology was revolutionary, but because of the honesty. Because a Japanese CEO had publicly admitted failure. Because he accredited a woman he had once dismissed. Maria stood beside him, and together they unveiled the microchip. The media called it the Santos processor. The name stuck. Within 3 months, major tech companies were placing orders worth billions. Apple wanted it. Microsoft wanted it. Samsung wanted what Nakamura Electronics had created. The company's valuation doubled. Nakamura became a symbol of corporate humility. Maria became a symbol of underestimated talent. Maria's success triggered something unexpected. Suddenly, Filipino engineers were being recruited by major tech companies worldwide. Universities in the Philippines received increased funding. The narrative shifted from the Philippines as a source of cheap labor to the Philippines as an innovation hub. Maria herself received offers from Silicon Valley, from Microsoft, from Tesla. Each one came with extraordinary compensation. She turned them all down. Instead, she did something that surprised everyone. She established the Santos Engineering Institute in Manila, a research facility dedicated to training the next generation of Filipino innovators. She returned home not as a visitor, but as a visionary building infrastructure for her country's future. Nakamura funded it, not as charity, as investment, because he understood now that innovation knows no borders, that talent blooms where it is nurtured, that a closed mind is a failing company's first symptom. The institute became a beacon. Young Filipinos who might have left the country to find opportunity now found it at home. Families stayed together. Brains that would have been lost to diaspora stayed in the Philippines, contributing to national development. Years passed. Maria became one of the world's most respected semiconductor engineers. She was invited to speak at MIT and Stanford. She received awards from the IEEE. She was featured in documentaries about Asian innovation. But what mattered most to her was not the international recognition. It was watching her first graduating class from the Santos Institute get hired by companies across Asia. It was hearing from her mother that the property they had mortgaged was now fully paid off, and her parents lived comfortably. It was knowing that she had not just changed her own trajectory. She had altered the trajectory of an entire nation's perception of itself. Nakamura, now in his 70s, stepped down as CEO of Nakamura Electronics. But before he left, he did something symbolic. He took that manila envelope, the one he had dismissed so many years ago, and he framed it. It now hangs in the company's main lobby, beside the microchip that revolutionized the industry. Young engineers walk past it every day. Japanese engineers, Filipino engineers, engineers from around the world. And the message is clear. Innovation does not recognize borders. Genius does not announce itself with familiar credentials. The story of Maria Santos and Dr. Hiroshi Nakamura became a case study in business schools, not just because of the technological breakthrough, but because of what it revealed about leadership, prejudice, and the cost of dismissing unfamiliar talent. Nakamura was invited to speak at companies about unconscious bias. He was honest about his journey. I was a meritocrat who did not recognize merit when it arrived without credentials I understood, he would say. I was inclusive in theory but exclusionary in practice. And it took almost losing my company to understand this. The semiconductor industry began changing. Companies started actively recruiting from non-traditional sources, looking for innovation in unexpected places, understanding that the next breakthrough might come from an engineer in Manila, Lagos, Sao Paulo, or Nairobi. All it required was a willingness to see beyond assumptions. The Santos processor became ubiquitous in global technology. iPhones, servers, autonomous vehicles, medical devices. Wherever heat management was critical, the Santos design was likely involved. Maria's name became known to millions of people who would never know what she looked like. But there was a moment that still haunted Nakamura in his quiet retirement years. He had been invited to speak at the Philippine Institute of Technology, where Maria had studied. When he arrived, he visited a laboratory where she had developed the design. It was a humble facility, equipment that was outdated by Tokyo standards, a room that clearly had received minimal investment. And yet, this was where the innovation that had transformed his company had been born. He stood in that laboratory and thought about all the other potential Marias in rooms like this across the developing world. How many breakthroughs had been missed because his company, and companies like his, had never looked beyond Tokyo, San Francisco, and Boston? How much human potential was being wasted because of systematic blindness to geography? The laboratory director, an older professor with kind eyes, asked him, Do you regret that you did not see Maria's potential earlier? Nakamura took a long time answering. Yes, he finally said. But more importantly, I regret how many others I likely still do not see. Because this is a truth that neither Maria nor Nakamura would fully articulate publicly. The story of the dismissed microchip is not really about one innovation or one person. It is a story that repeats thousands of times every day across the world. Talented people working in resource-constrained environments. Brilliant minds in countries that do not have the brand recognition of the West. Innovators who are rejected not because their ideas are bad, but because the gatekeepers of opportunity cannot imagine that excellence exists outside their familiar territories. For every Maria Santos, there are 1,000 other engineers whose envelopes never even reach the right desk. Whose emails are filtered as spam. Whose credentials are dismissed because they do not have the right name on the institution. The revolution that Maria started was not just technological. It was a revolution in visibility, in recognition, in the radical belief that talent is distributed globally and systems of power have simply failed to see it. What Nakamura learned in his 70s was something a younger person might have understood earlier, that dismissal is often not malice. It is blindness. Maria's children, when they were born in Japan and the Philippines both, grew up in a world transformed. They took for granted what their mother had fought for, that innovation could come from anywhere, that national origin did not determine intellectual worth, that a brilliant idea was a brilliant idea regardless of which ocean it had crossed. When Maria's daughter expressed interest in engineering, no one questioned whether she had the pedigree for it. When her son wanted to study in the Philippines instead of Tokyo, it seemed natural. The revolution of visibility that had started with one dismissed manila envelope had become so complete that the next generation barely understood how revolutionary it had been. They simply lived in the world Maria had helped create. A world where talent could emerge from any zip code, where innovation was recognized regardless of accent, where the best idea won regardless of the credentials of the person presenting it. This, perhaps, was Maria's greatest contribution. Not the microchip itself, but the permission structure she had created for others to be seen. But in the years that followed, both Maria and Nakamura were confronted with an uncomfortable truth. The story of Maria Santos became inspirational precisely because it was exceptional. It should not have been exceptional. The fact that one Filipino engineer's breakthrough was treated as remarkable revealed something disturbing about the structure of global innovation. That talent should flow freely from every corner of the globe had become obvious to everyone. Yet the systems that had kept it contained for centuries remained largely intact. Universities in developing countries still struggle for resources. Researchers in emerging economies still face visa restrictions when trying to collaborate internationally. Capital still flowed overwhelmingly toward established innovation hubs. One success story could not fix systemic issues. It could only illuminate them. Nakamura, in conversations with Maria, would sometimes ask, did we inspire change or did we just tell a beautiful story that made people feel better about their prejudices? Maria would not answer directly. Instead, she would point to the students graduating from her institute, to the companies being founded in Manila and Cebu, to the young minds that had not left their country because opportunity had finally come home. As the years progressed, both Maria and Nakamura came to understand their story differently. It was not the end of a narrative. It was the beginning of one. They had been given a platform, visibility, respect, and with that came responsibility. Nakamura established a global fellowship program that explicitly recruited engineers from underrepresented regions, not as charity, as strategic advantage. He understood now that the best ideas came from diverse perspectives, that innovation accelerated when you could draw from the full spectrum of human talent. Maria, meanwhile, became an advocate for systemic change. She testified before government committees about the need for increased research funding in developing nations. She wrote papers about the mathematics of lost potential, the calculations showing how many breakthroughs never happened because the engineers who could have had them lived in the wrong country. She became, in her own quiet way, a revolutionary, not through manifestos or protests, but through the power of demonstration. By succeeding, by being visible, by insisting that her identity as a Filipino engineer was not a limitation but part of her strength. The Santos processor entered popular consciousness in ways that surprised everyone. Children in the Philippines learned about it in school, understanding it not just as a technical achievement but as a symbol of possibility. What had started as a specific innovation became a metaphor. For anyone from an underestimated background, the Santos processor was proof that your origin did not determine your destiny, that the most powerful ideas sometimes come from the least expected places, that the world's greatest innovations might be waiting in laboratories and universities that the major corporations have never bothered to visit. Articles were written not just about the technology, but about the timeline. How long Maria had waited, how many dismissals she had faced, how close the world had come to never knowing about her work. Some of these articles made Nakamura uncomfortable. They highlighted his role in the dismissal, his years of ignorance, but he did not shy away from them. He understood that his discomfort was part of the point, that the story only had power if it included the honest acknowledgement of prejudice, that transformation required discomfort. The story of Maria and Nakamura had ripple effects that neither could have predicted. Brain drain from developing nations actually slowed. Why move to Silicon Valley if opportunity was being created at home? The Philippines began attracting foreign investment in research and development at unprecedented levels. Other countries looked at the Santos Institute and created similar facilities. Governments realized that talent development was economic development. Universities in the global south began receiving recognition for their contributions to global innovation. But there were also darker ripples. Some companies cynically tried to replicate the Santos effect by hiring one or two promising engineers from underrepresented backgrounds while maintaining systemic exclusion everywhere else. Some used the story as a band-aid excuse not to engage in deeper structural change. Maria and Nakamura watched these distortions with some frustration. The story was being weaponized in ways they had not intended. It was being used to suggest that the system was working fine, that the problem was solved, when in reality, the battle for systemic change was just beginning. 20 years after the initial breakthrough, Maria and Nakamura had a conversation that they never made public. They were both aging now. Nakamura was in his 90s, Maria in her 60s. They met in Tokyo, at a quiet restaurant overlooking the same city skyline Nakamura had stared at for decades. Maria asked him a direct question. "Do you think I would have succeeded if I had been born in Tokyo instead of Manila?" Nakamura considered this carefully. "Yes," he said finally, "but differently. You would have succeeded faster, with less struggle. Your journey would have been shorter, your rewards sooner, your doubts fewer. That is what privilege means. Not the freedom to succeed. The freedom to succeed without proving yourself constantly." Maria nodded, and there was a long silence between them. "I do not regret my path," she said, "but I wish others did not have to walk it." This conversation, though it remained private, shaped both of their final years. They became even more committed to creating pathways for others, understanding that the story of their success, while important, was incomplete without acknowledgement that it should have been easier, that systemic change required more than inspiring stories. It required changing systems. As Nakamura approached the end of his life, he established a final philanthropic initiative, the Global Talent Initiative, not focused on a specific region or technology, but dedicated to the principle that human potential exists everywhere, and that systems should be built to discover and nurture it. In his inaugural speech, he addressed something he had never quite articulated publicly, the guilt he still carried. "I was a successful man," he said, his voice trembling. "I had all the markers of success. My company was profitable. My reputation was established. I had designed systems that I believed were meritocratic. And yet, I could not see beyond my own assumptions. It took losing almost everything to understand what I had been missing. I wonder, even now, how many other talented people I failed to see. How many Marias are out there, still waiting for someone to open a door that should never have been closed." The speech went viral again, not because it was hopeful, but because it was honest, because it acknowledged that the problem was not solved, because it suggested that success and blindness could coexist. Maria attended Nakamura's funeral. She sat in the front row, beside his daughter. The CEO of Nakamura Electronics gave a eulogy focused on corporate achievements. But what people remembered most was when Maria stood up, uninvited, and spoke. She talked about the Manila envelope, about the rejection, about the years of work no one saw, and about the moment Nakamura had bowed in his office. He showed me something that day, she said. He showed me that greatness includes a capacity to admit failure, that wisdom includes a humility to recognize blindness, that leadership means creating space for those you once dismissed. I came to Japan seeking recognition. What I found was partnership. What I learned is that changing the world does not require perfection. It requires courage to see what you have been missing. As she sat back down, there were few dry eyes in the room. The story had come full circle, but in a way that suggested it would never truly end. Because a larger story of systemic exclusion, of unrealized potential, of gatekeepers finally opening doors, was ongoing. Nakamura's death marked the end of one chapter, but the work continued. Years after Nakamura's death, the Santos processor remained the dominant technology in thermal management. New engineers, most of whom would never know Nakamura or fully understand why the story mattered, used it in their designs. It had become infrastructure, so essential that its origin story was almost forgotten. But the deeper legacy remained. Maria's institute had trained thousands of engineers. Dozens of major innovations had emerged from the Philippines and other countries that had previously been invisible in the global innovation landscape. Companies actively recruited from unexpected sources. Universities in the global south had become destinations, not origins of brain drain. Was it enough? Maria, now elder stateswoman of the engineering world, would smile when asked this. No, she would say, it is not enough, but it is more than yesterday. And tomorrow, we work to make it more again. The manila envelope, still framed in Nakamura Electronics lobby, had become a pilgrimage site. Young engineers would stand before it and understand, in that moment, what was possible. Not because of one microchip, but because of one man's willingness to admit he was wrong, and one woman's refusal to disappear when dismissed. In their intersection, the future had been born,